Beyond the Mortal Veil by Taylor Redmond. Hey Doc, can you come take a look at this? Pete squinted at the feed. It made no sense. The mirror link was supposed to display the inner thoughts of their patient, Mr. Jensen. It was a groundbreaking technology developed by Dr. Peterson with a simple implant into the brainstem. A remote team could not only see through the eyes of their patient, but also the images conjured up by the mind. He and the doctor had seen extraordinary footage from the willing patient. Every time he would text his wife, they would not only see the phone, but also a vivid image of Mrs. Jensen, her bright blue eyes, deep red hair, and smooth skin. All that from a simple good morning text. But now, the screen showed something different. The image on screen was stock still. Corrupted streaks of static stretched from the edge of the screen that only showed a black and white image. The only discernible features that Pete could see was a large dark mass in the center and 4 pale streaks rushing towards the center of the mass. Dr. Peterson sat down next to him, rubbing his eyes. Yes, give me a second. My weekend was fine. Thanks for asking, by the way. Jesus, it's too much for a Monday morning. He took a gulp from his coffee and rolled his chair next to Pete's. Alright, what's up? Pete simply pointed at the screen. I think something's going on with your moneymaker, Doc. Did you try resetting the monitor? Yeah, the monitor and console are working fine. Every time I reset it, it just goes back to this image. The doctor stood up from his chair, gazing at the black circle on the screen. What even is that? Looks like a hole of some kind. And those streaks on the screen, they kind of look like arms? Pete squinted at the screen's bottom. Now that the doc mentioned it, he could see 5 smaller lines coming from the streaks on the bottom. Maybe he had a bad dream. The doc shook his head. No. He should be up by now. And besides, we've seen his dreams before. They've never been static like this. No, this is a technical issue. I swear to God, if he went through a metal detector again, I will rip that chip out with my bare hands. Pete snorted at the doctor's ramblings. Alright, calm down. Want me to call up Mr. Jensen? The doctor waved his hand in a flippant manner as he stood up, coffee in hand. Pete sighed as he dialed in the number. He put the phone up to his ear. Would it even be possible to replace the chip? They'd installed the implant but never really had a plan to remove it. The phone rang about a dozen times before going straight to voicemail. Hey Doc, he's not answering. Distant cursing erupted from the back of the room. Okay, just a sec, let me try again. Pete dialed the number once more. This time, the phone picked up on the first ring. Hello, Mr. Jensen, it's the Mirrorlink team here. We need you to... Oh, Mrs. Jensen, is that you? A muffled sob on the other end of the line was his only response. Mrs. Jensen? A woman's voice crackled on the line. Hey, Pete. Yes, it's me. Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but is your husband around? We're having issues with his implant feed. He immediately regretted asking as she broke down into sobs. Pete motioned the doctor to come back to the station. Is everything okay, ma'am? No, Danny. He passed Friday night. The air escaped from Pete's lungs. He exchanged a wide-eyed look with the doctor. The doc motioned for Pete to put the phone on speaker. Ma'am, I'm sorry for your loss. It's Dr. Peterson here. I'm sorry to ask, but I have to. But what was the cause of death? Mr. Jensen was in prime health. I hate to think that it was a complication from the surgery. No, doctor. It was a heart attack. A heart attack? At his age? It runs in his side of the family. Apparently, he had a heart murmur when he was born. The doctors swore that it was small and wouldn't bother him, but now... She burst into fresh cries. The doctor's shoulders sagged. I'm so sorry for your loss. If there's anything we can do... Thank you, doctor, but no. I'm sorry, but I have to make funeral arrangements. Of course. Take care. The doctor hung up the phone and stared blankly at Pete as he slumped into his chair. An awkward silence passed before Peter couldn't stand it any longer. So the chip? Do we need to take it out or something? Dr. Peterson shook his head. No, it was disposable. No need to trouble her any fuck. His voice cut off as he sprang from his chair as if burned. He stared at the screen. Mr. Jensen's final image. My God. The footage didn't get corrupted. It ended. This is Mr. Jensen's final thought. The surreality of the situation crashed into Pete like a wave. His body tingled all over as he stared at the screen. What are we looking at, Doc? The doctor didn't break his gaze from the screen but whispered, Rewind the footage. What? The doctor turned to him, a near-manic gleam in his eyes. Don't you see? We can see what a person sees before they die. The final frontier, the question that has eluded medics for centuries. Pete's heart thundered in his chest. The thought excited him. But wait, is this right, Doctor? Should we call his wife or something first? The doctor let out a breathless chuckle. Your hand is already on the dial, Pete. You're desperate to know too. Pete looked down at the controls. Indeed, his hand was already primed and ready to rewind to Mr. Jensen's last moments. His mind was made up, but one question still burned in his mind. What do you think we'll see, Doc? Dr. Peterson put a hand to his chin. I really don't know, son. It's been a matter of speculation, perhaps as long as mankind first had coherent thoughts. Some doctors think that you were flooded with a stream of dopamine, the body's attempt to calm the body before death. You were flooded with all of your best memories and die in a moment of bliss. And what do you think, Doc? What do you think we see before we die? The doctor let out a shuddered breath. I really don't know. Perhaps something more profound, something that goes beyond science, something that will reassure me that life has meaning. Pete's hand trembled on the dial. Okay, Doc, how far back are we going? I don't know. Let's go back in 10-minute lots. Pete spun the dial backwards. The distorted image disappeared, only to be replaced by a black screen. Flashes of colour whizzed by the further Pete scrolled back. Finally, the screen displayed coherent, full-coloured images. Okay, stop there. Pete lifted his hand off the dial. The image on screen displayed a sofa facing a TV. It was Mr. Jensen's living room. The point of view showed his legs laid out, relaxing on the couch. The scene played out before the entire image throbbed with a ring of black. Pain. He's in pain. The attack is starting, the doctor whispered. The point of view shot up as the patient stood up. The living room disappeared, flashing into an artist's depiction of a heart before flashing back. He knows it's a heart attack. The images flashed in an erratic manner now. It went from the living room, the patient now collapsed on the floor, then to an ambulance, then to a cell phone, and back to the living room, facing the ceiling, then to random places around his house. He's trying to call an ambulance but has no idea where his phone is. It's too late for him. The footage showed off the white plaster of the ceiling uninterrupted for a couple of seconds. The doctor leaned in, sweat beading his brow. That can't be it. What about your wife? Life events? Everything you've ever experienced? Nothing? Nothing at all? The ceiling displayed dimmed black dots popping in sporadically. The dark dots filled until the screen went black. A hushed silence fell upon the room. Pete was almost afraid to ask, "So, what's happening to him now?" The doctor spoke in a dead voice. "It's all clinical from here on out. The brain is suffocated, eliminating sight. His heart has stopped, but the brain is still alive for a couple of minutes afterwards." A flash of light sparked on the screen. Pete stared transfixed as random colours wisped on the screen in all hues. Dim blue, ethereal green, ominous red. They flared bright at first, then with each burst grew softer and dimmer. "What is this, Doc?" "It's the last synapses of the brain firing. They will die out in a couple of seconds, and then that's it. That's the end. There's nothing." The doctor couldn't hide the bitter edge from his voice. Pete reached out to the doctor's shoulder as the screen went black. "I'm sorry, sir." The doctor wiped a tear from his face and spoke in a thick voice. "Thanks, son. It's fine. It just means we have to live life to the fullest while we can. Make our own purpose." The black footage played on until the image, the same corrupted image, popped up on screen where the feed had cut off. The dark circle, unassuming at first, now loomed ominously in Pete's mind with the added context. The streaks on screen, what he had first thought to be static, looked so lifelike. "Do you know what this is then, Doctor?" "I don't know. Can you clean the footage up a bit?" Pete sprang to work. Yeah, sure. Just a sec. Let me alter the contrast and brightness setting on the program and... Here." They sat back as the monitor applied Pete's settings gradually. The dark mass coalesced into a perfect sphere. The grey surrounding it materialised into a rippling sea like the coast of a stormy ocean. Dark veins scarred its surface like blood vessels. And the streaks of static, there was no doubt about it. They were Mr. Jensen's legs and arms, hands outstretched as if to break his fall. His limbs were still blurred as if in mid-motion, free-falling into the abyss of the pit. Even on screen, Pete couldn't help but feel helpless, perhaps at how small the arms and legs were in comparison to the whole on display. Pete took it all in, nausea welling up in his throat. This wasn't a pit. This wasn't an ocean. He knew what he was looking at, but couldn't believe it. Is that an eye? God withheld the fruit of knowledge from man, lest he discover what was never to be seen. I just want to thank Taylor Redmond for allowing me to narrate that story. If you liked what you heard here, leave some comments below and show them some love. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and as always, stay tuned for one more nightmare.